Welcome back to another 70-mile-an-hour highway range test. Yeah, this is my third in 3 weeks, which is a lot for me. And that's because the spring is here in northern New Jersey, so I've scheduled some press loans. I don't love doing the range tests in the winter because the weather can vary so much from day to day. It could snow, could be ice. The cars don't go as far, although there is value in doing winter range tests also. But once the weather warms up, I like to get some of the new models and see just how far they'll go at a constant 70 miles an hour, which is what I am clocked in at now in this 2025 Cadillac Optiq. This is a brand new model for the brand, and it's kind of the little brother of the Cadillac Lyriq and the cousin to the Chevy Equinox EV. And those that follow my channel know I have a Chevy Equinox EV. So the Optiq is kind of like the dressed up suit and tie version of the Equinox. It shares a lot of the same components, same battery pack, and it's very familiar to me sitting in here, although the fit and finish is a little bit more premium than what you get in the Equinox, and certainly more premium than my Equinox. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the Optiq. As I said, it's new for 2025. Currently, it's only available in all-wheel drive trim. We expect that there'll be a rear-wheel drive version at some point down the road, but right now it's only available in all-wheel drive, and there are 4 different flavors. The vehicle comes in Luxury 1 and Luxury 2, as well as Sport 1 and Sport 2. General Motors set me up with the Luxury 2 version, which we're driving here today. This has 300 horsepower, 354 pound-feet of torque, and it goes 0 to 60 in just under 6 seconds, somewhere around 5.8, 5.9 seconds. It does have the Onyx package, which includes 21-inch black alloy wheels, and on those come 275/40 R21 all-season self-sealing tires. So this isn't the most efficient tire and wheel package that the Optiq would come with. There's smaller tires, 20-inch tires are standard. Those should probably be a little bit more efficient. However, there's no EPA rating distinction. The Optiq still isn't on the EPA's website as far as the official range ratings, but the Monroney sticker does say that this is rated at 302 miles. In fact, currently all the Optiqs have a 302-mile range rating. I don't know if it's going to hold at that, or if we're going to see slightly different ranges with different tire and wheel packages. That's typically the case. Doesn't always happen with all manufacturers, but most break out slightly different EPA range ratings depending on what tire and wheel package you have. Okay, so we're on the New Jersey Turnpike, cruising along at 70 miles an hour in an 2025 Cadillac Optiq with a sticker price of about $61,000. The price range for the Optiq goes from $54,390 and up, depending on which model you have and what options. This is optioned out, as most press cars are, so it pushed that price up over $60,000, which is a lot more than the Equinox EV, which starts at around $35,000. So you do pay for the extra premium luxury. Now, of course, a lot of things are standard. For instance, Super Cruise, which I'm using here, the hands-free Super Cruise, is standard on the Optiq, and it's an option on the Equinox. So there are some standard goodies you get in there, but the vehicle is probably somewhere between 10 and 15,000 more if you were to option it similarly. So you are paying to have that Cadillac badge and the extra premium and luxury. Okay, well, I'm going to continue driving here. Our first check-in will be at 75% state of charge, but I'm probably going to come back slightly before that and talk about the ground rules that I always have when I do my 70-mile-an-hour highway range tests. See you then. All right, so let's talk a little bit about what I do in these 70-mile-an-hour highway range tests so that it's fair from vehicle to vehicle. I try to repeat the same steps all the time. First of all, I make sure the tire pressure is set to the manufacturer's specified tire pressure. We've done that. I put the vehicle in the most efficient driving mode that it offers. In the case of the Optiq, that's Tour mode, so we're in Tour mode. I set the HVAC system to somewhere between 68 and 70 degrees, whatever makes me comfortable. And on the lowest fan setting, we're at 70 degrees, and on the lowest fan setting, the heat is on because it's cold today. When I started this range test, it was 37 degrees out. Now, I did park the vehicle in a heated garage overnight, which was around 65 degrees, so the battery shouldn't have cold soaked. It was decent, nice and warm. And then I charged it up to get the battery even more warm, up to 100% this morning. So we're doing the best we can, getting the car in good shape for a good range test. Now, it is up to 41 degrees now, so the temperature's gradually rising, but it's going to be a chilly day here in New Jersey. And then I also make sure that we're driving at really 70 miles an hour, because speedometers aren't always tremendously accurate. So in the case of the Optiq, I have to set the Super Cruise. You could say my hands-free Super Cruise is still on at 71 miles an hour in order for us to be driving at a constant 70 miles an hour, which I check with a couple of GPS apps that I have. So we are set at 71, but we're driving 70 miles an hour true down the New Jersey Turnpike. Now, there's something else I want to mention that I forgot to mention in the intro. That's battery size. The Optiq has a, well, according to General Motors, 85 kilowatt hour battery pack, but it's pretty much been well documented that the battery pack's larger than that. We're going to have about 90 kilowatt hours to access today. So in each quarter of the range test, I should be able to access somewhere around 22 kilowatt hour. And there is displayed on the center infotainment screen. One of the things that I do like about General Motors vehicles is they do give you your trip total energy used in kilowatt hours. So we'll be documenting that, as well as the consumption rate. And let me switch lanes, as I always do when I do the range test. So if we only had 85 kilowatt hour usable, as GM publishes on the Optiq, it's the same for my Equinox, we should only be able to access about 21.25 kilowatt hour per quarter of the range test. But I bet you we get over 22 for each quarter, because this is a brand new vehicle. When it was dropped off at my house, it only has 200 miles on it. So this pack is nice and fresh. We should be able to access the whole total capacity of it, which I'm hoping is right around 90 kilowatt hour. But we'll see as the range test goes on. But first impressions, I really like the Optiq. I love this interior, super comfortable. I love this center console here. It's raised up. It's got nice glossy wood finish. And I love this blue interior. It's definitely different, but I certainly like it. It's got a mixture of textile here. It's got this fabric as well as the leather surfaces. So super nice interior, very comfortable. The Super Cruise is Super Cruise. It's basically the same in all the vehicles. Hands-free with automatic lane change, which I have turned off. I don't like letting the vehicle make the lane changes by itself. I have it set so that I'll put the blinker on and then it executes the lane change. I found that even with my Equinox, it seems like it's a little lane change happy. It makes a little bit more lane changes than I think is necessary, so I give it the blinker to do the lane change, which I'm going to do right now, because there's a truck and I've slowed down to 69 miles an hour. So I put the blinker on, we've moved over to the fast lane, we're going to pass this truck, and then I'll put the blinker on and move back in front of the truck. So I mentioned that I put it in Tour mode. There's three main driving modes: Tour, Sport, Snow and Ice, and then you have a personal. Now I'm going to put the blinker on and move back, and then a personal setting, which you can set and configure the vehicle to the driving mode that you prefer. There's also 6 display screens, which is pretty cool. Here it has, the first is a gauge, and the gauge screen you can toggle between Tour and Sport, and you can actually link it to the drive mode. So if you go in tour drive mode, that's what you automatically get. And if you go in sport, you get the sport configuration. And then there's also energy, map, assist, and clean. So there's 6 different driver's displays that you can have in front of you. And I like that they let you have such a wide variety of different displays to use. However, none of them, and if you follow this channel, you know this bothers me, none of them have a numeric state of charge. Everything within the vehicle is just a bar for how much fuel you have, really mimicking gasoline. And I just don't understand why General Motors does this on a lot of their vehicles. Just about every other manufacturer, maybe even every other manufacturer, gives the driver the option to have a numeric state of charge. Like, you know, right now I'm at about 78%. It doesn't give you the option to see that number. It's just the bar. But most EVs allow you either have it statically on there all the time, or allow the owner to enable a numeric state of charge. When I had my Ford F-150 Lightning delivered, I was surprised that it didn't have a numeric state of charge. I complained to Ford. Other people did too in some of the forums. And in the first OTA that Ford sent out for the Lightning, I believe it was the first one, they added the numeric state of charge because people said, look, I want it. I know a lot of people maybe don't care to see that. That's fine. You don't have to look at it. You can even turn it off. But give us the option to have that. So it makes it a little harder on my range tests because I don't know the exact state of charge. Now I do have the My Cadillac app and I can see it within the app, but I don't want to be pulling my phone out while I'm driving and constantly updating it. And as far as updating it, the GM in general, General Motors apps, my Chevrolet app also, are terrible. The lag time, I'd already be on 1 or 2% lower by the time it updated and told me I was at a set percentage. So I'm going to have to kind of watch the bar drop, and as soon as it clicks to what I believe is going to be that state of charge that I want to record, I'll record it. And if it's off a little bit on the 75%, 50% check-ins, that really doesn't matter. What really matters the most is the end result, and I'll make sure that we drain this guy down to 0 when we end the range test. Okay, well, the first check-in will be at 75%, which isn't going to be too long from now, probably, like I said, at around 78%. We'll check in then, we'll see how far we've gone. My guess is that it's going to be somewhere around 70 miles, maybe a little less. We'll see. State of Charge is powered by Qmerit, North America's premier installer of electric vehicle charging equipment. After I've helped you decide which charger to buy, follow the link in the description of my videos and have Qmerit install it. And if you do follow that link, Qmerit will waive the $150 installation deposit. But this is an exclusive offer for State of Charge followers. So in order to get that offer, you must follow the link in the description of my videos. All right, we're at 75% state of charge, so 1/4 of the range test is over, and we've gone 67.3 miles. I was hoping to go a little bit further, but it is what it is. We're at 2.9 miles per kilowatt hour, and the vehicle has said that we have consumed 23 kilowatt hour. So, if you recall, let me make a lane change here. If you recall what I was saying earlier as far as the capacity we have to work with, if we were to repeat that on each of the 4 segments, 23, 23, 23, 23, we'd be at 92 kilowatt hour used. Now, as I mentioned earlier, General Motors said that it has an 85 kilowatt hour battery pack, but I believe that number's around 90 kilowatt hour. So I'm thinking we're going to use slightly less in the next 3/4 of the range test, somewhere around 22 for each quarter, but we'll see. You know, we don't have the exact number from GM, and depending on a lot of factors like temperature, for instance, the pack has more or less energy at its disposal from day to day, slightly, but it does make a difference. So we could possibly have over 90 kilowatt hour here accessible today. Now I know a lot of people say, well, what about regenerative braking? Because that's going to add some energy back, and you're right about that. But the way General Motors infotainment system works, the way its settings are, is that if I regen 5 kilowatt hour during this range test, it takes that off of the energy used. So it could actually watch the amount of total energy used on this trip lower if I were to regen strongly. So that doesn't add it on. So you don't get, if the battery pack is 90 kilowatt hour, at the end of this range test, a dead battery won't say that I used 95 kilowatt hour. Let's say if I regened 5 extra kilowatt hour, it will still say 90. So that's not the reason why it's going to display higher than what General Motors publishes with 85 kilowatt hour. I think that's just a cautious approach, and it could be something also with warranty, because they warranty a certain capacity of the original size pack. If they underrate the original size of the pack, when you're looking for a warranty down the road, you have less of the starting point was lower, so you're less likely to get a warranty pack claim. That's just my speculation, but it seems to be something that a lot of people share that opinion. But in any event, I think we have about 90 kilowatt hour here today to access. The first leg seems to indicate that's true, using 23 kilowatt hour for the first 25% of the range test. Next check-in will be at 50%, and we'll see where we're at that point. All right, so we're at 50% state of charge. Half of the range test is over. We've gone 133.3 miles. We still have a 2.9 mile per kilowatt hour consumption rate. That's holding steady. And so that means we've gone 66 miles from 75% down to 50%. A little bit less than the 67.3 miles we went from 100% down to 75%, but that's really negligible, 1.3 miles. Pretty rock solid for both quarters. And that means we're tracking only 266 miles. I really thought we were going to get closer to 300, around 280, but we'll see. We could do better in the second half. We have consumed 46.5 kilowatt hour, which is basically the same as what we did from 100% down to 75%. We used 23 kilowatt hour, and from 75% down to 50%, we used 23.5 kilowatt hour. So we're tracking more than 90 kilowatt hour used still on a vehicle that General Motors tells you has an 85 kilowatt hour battery pack. So we'll see where we finish up. I'm certain we're going to finish up close to 90, if not more than that at this point, which is good for Optiq owners. You're getting a bigger battery than what General Motors promises you that you're getting. All right, we'll check in when we're at 25% state of charge. That's our final check-in before the last final mile drive that I do to the charging station. So see you at 25%. Okay, our last check-in before our final drive to the charging station, and we've gone 195.7 miles. So that means in that segment, we only went 62.4 miles, which is the shortest distance we've gone in any of the 3 quarters of this range test. And our consumption has taken a hit. It's down to 2.7 miles per kilowatt hour. Now I noticed right after I did the 50% check-in, it dropped to 2.8 miles per kilowatt hour. And now, just maybe 10 minutes before I hit 25% state of charge, it dropped down to 2.7. A couple of reasons for that. My guess would be, so we are driving in more of a headwind on that quarter of the drive. It's about 7 mile an hour headwind now, whereas previously we were being aided by that. And also it's cold out today. It's only gotten up to 44 degrees. So, you know, I had the battery nice and warm at the beginning. I had it in a heated garage overnight. We charged it up to get it nice and warm. But now it's been out for 3 hours or so, and I think the pack is cooling off, and that makes it a little bit less energy dense. You don't get as much out of every kilowatt hour. So that could be those two things, the wind and the fact that it's cold. I would wish it was a nice 75, 80 degree day like I had a couple weeks ago when I did the Taycan Cross Turismo range test, but you know, everybody drives in all kinds of weather, so it's useful to do these range tests in all kinds of weather, and this is what we have here today. So now we're tracking under 260 miles, but I did notice in that quarter again we were over 23 kilowatt hour use. We used 23.3 kilowatt hour, and that means we're at 69.8 now. So in the first quarter we used 23 kilowatt hour, second quarter 23.5, and then that third quarter from 50% down to 25%, 23.3 kilowatt hour, at least what the vehicle is displaying as used. So we are on course to use 92 kilowatt hour, again out of a car that General Motors says has an 85 kilowatt hour usable battery pack. So that's good. They under promise and over deliver, but again, it could be little nefarious reasons, also could be warranty reasons why they understate the capacity. But the good news is you get more battery than they promise you. I've noticed this with my Equinox. It has the same battery system, same charging, same size battery as the Optiq, and I have over 90 kilowatt hour usable. This is a brand new vehicle. Looks like we're going to access close to 92 kilowatt hours. So we'll see how much I can squeeze out at the end, and how the end of the charging, this range test, figures with my timing, with what exits I get off at the end. Sometimes I can't time it perfectly where I'm pulling up right at zero, but I do my best to do that. So I will check in when I'm just gotten off the highway, and the final 1.5 to 2 miles to the charging station at an Electrify America charging station at a Walmart. So we'll see. We'll check in then. All right, so I just pulled off the highway, a little bit more than a mile from the charging station, and I am in reduced power mode. I got all the warnings: reduced power mode, low battery, turtle mode. At 249 miles, I could no longer maintain 70 miles an hour. The car slowed down to about 63 miles an hour. I don't know what the state of charge is, because GM in their wonderful thought process said that we don't need to tell people what their state of charge is. We should just have a little bar to kind of show them where it's at. So I'm going to keep beating that drum, because it's such a bad interface that you don't have a state of charge on display. So yeah, 249 miles. I couldn't maintain 70 miles an hour anymore. I was getting off, the exit was like a mile away anyway. I'm at 251.5 miles now. There's no remaining miles, because again, once you get down to 15 miles remaining, GM removes the remaining miles and just says low on their vehicles, which it's almost as if they intentionally want to make the owners have the worst driving experience possible when they're at a low state of charge. We won't tell them their state of charge, and we won't tell them how many miles they have left. I can find that in the app, but I don't want to pull up my app while I'm stressed looking for a charging station and look at my phone. And currently I'm actually using my phone as a camera, so I wouldn't be using that. But in any event, we're probably going to end with like 1% state of charge. When I can't maintain 70 miles an hour anymore, for me the range test is over. At that point, it's time to get off the highway and get to a charger. And that happened, like I said, at like 249.5 miles. And looks like we're gonna finish up with 252 as a total driven. I can shut this thing off now. The total range for this whole trip is going to be about 252 miles. I couldn't maintain 70 miles an hour after 249 miles, so you can decide what you want to accept as the final number. I'll put down the 252 because that's when I ended the drive, but 70 miles an hour ended at 249. I'm right around the block now from the charging station. This was, it was interesting at the end. Usually I can maintain 70 miles an hour in most of these cars, you know, right up until nearly to the point where the battery's going to die. And this was definitely at least 2% state of charge, because I could tell there was a millimeter or so of that bar showing, and you could see each percent it drops. So I know I was probably at like 2%, so I'm surprised I couldn't maintain 70 miles an hour with 2% state of charge. 63 was pinned at 63. It was maintaining 63, but I had the accelerator just down to the floor for like a mile. All right, well, I'm pulling into Walmart now, so we are not going to run out. And the Electrify America station here looks like there's a charger open, which is good. Won't have to wait. And then we'll take a look at the final numbers once I get into the parking spot. And there's another Cadillac here. There's a Lyric. Let's see here. Okay. Pull in and park. Okay. So let's take a picture of the final stats here. 252.3 miles. The final efficiency is 2.7 miles per kilowatt hour. You know, the colder weather and that wind definitely played a role. And the energy used here says 90.5 kilowatt hours. So we got a lot less in that last segment. Let me total things up here real quick, and we'll take a look at the final numbers. So we're at 90. All right, with finishing up with 252.3 miles means we went 56.6 miles in that segment, which was the shortest by nearly 10 miles of the other segments. The total kilowatt hour used was 90.5, which means we only accessed 20.7 in that last segment. There's some more in this pack for sure. Probably about 2 more kilowatt hour. Probably could have went another 6 miles if I wanted to crawl along at low speeds, but that's not the point of a 70 mile an hour highway range test. And we finished up with a consumption of 2.7 miles per kilowatt hour. Not bad for the Optiq. I really thought we were going to do better than this, to be honest with you. I wish it was warmer, and I wish I had the 20-inch standard wheels on. I bet you the temperature and the wheels shaved about 20 to 25 miles off the range test here today, but maybe I'll get the opportunity to borrow one again in the middle of the summer when it's nice and warm and do a comparison range test. But I mean, even if we were averaging what we were in the very beginning, when I know the pack was nice and warm, that would have only given us another 10 or no, actually about 15 more miles. We were tracking like 266 in the beginning. So that's still not fantastic for a car that's going to have a EPA combined range rating of over 300 miles, 302 miles. You know, 250, 260 isn't great at 70 miles an hour. And while it's cool out today, we started out in 37-degree temperature. We ended in 46-degree temperature. So it's nearly a 10-minute swing in the 30s and the 40s. That's cool. That's not like bitter cold. That's not like, you know, dead of winter, 20-mile-an-hour winds, 10 degrees Fahrenheit cold. So, you know, I'm a little disappointed with the Optiq. I thought we were going to do a little bit better here today. All right, well, I'm going to plug in now, and what we're also going to do is a wrap up once I'm home. I'm going to really crunch all the numbers, and then we'll dissect what happened here a little bit further. So give me some time to take a look at this, and we'll do the wrap up once I'm back at the State of Charge garage. Okay, well, back in the State of Charge garage now. I've had some time to think about the range test. It's actually the next day, and I'm glad that I decided to do this wrap up here instead of all in the car, because I have some new information about the Optiq that wasn't readily available when I did that range test, and it's pertinent to this discussion. So first, let's take a look at the final figures. So from 100% down to 75%, I went 67.3 miles and used 23 kilowatt hour and had a consumption rating of 2.9 miles per kilowatt hour when I was at 75% state of charge. From 75% down to 50%, I went 67.6 miles. We had used 23.5 kilowatt hour in that segment. Now we're sitting at 46.5 total, and we were holding at 2.9 miles per kilowatt hour, from 50% down to 25%. We went 62.4 miles and used 23.3 kilowatt hours. So the total amount of kilowatt hour that the vehicle used at that point was 69.8. And we had dropped down to 2.7 miles per kilowatt hour. On that leg, we were facing a headwind, and I'm sure that that had something to do with it. And it was also cold, and I think the battery was getting colder as the day went on. Okay, so from 25% down to zero, went only 56.6 miles to end up with 252.3 miles, although we stopped driving 70 miles an hour at around 2 miles earlier, right around 249.5. So you could use either one as your figure, right around 250 miles. The total amount of kilowatt hours that the vehicle said it used was 90.5. And we only accessed 20.7 in that final 25% of the range test, leading me to believe I still had a few more kilowatt hour in the battery pack and ended the range test when I probably could have driven 6 or 7 more miles, but not at 70 miles an hour, because I wasn't able to maintain 70 miles an hour after 249.5 miles. And the final consumption rate was 2.7 miles per kilowatt hour. All right, so later that night, I went to a DC fast charger to do a 0 to 100% charge recording. I try to do it at night because the screen is clearer. I could have done it right when I finished the range test, but with the glare from the sun and everything, you can't really see the displays well. And the Electrify America station that I was at doesn't display the volts and the amps. And I like to see that in my videos. So I just charged it enough to get home. Later that night, drove to a DC fast charger to do a full charge recording, which will be another video you'll see later. And the interesting thing was, as I was running down the battery in the parking lot to get it to zero, the car ran out and stopped running at 2% state of charge. So close, yet so far. I was trying to drain the battery of this 2025 Cadillac Optiq down to zero so I could do a charge recording at this EVgo charge station here, but I didn't make it. Look how close I came. Car's here, charger's here, about 20 feet away. Anyway, thankfully, my buddy Pete here had my Ford F-150 Lightning, and we were able to plug it into Ford Pro Power on board and give me just enough juice now to pull into the EVgo charging station. I was at 2% state of charge when this thing stopped. So it's a brand new vehicle. The state of health of the battery probably isn't calibrated right. And I knew I was in trouble when I was at 3% because it got really squishy, wouldn't go faster than 20 miles an hour. So I pulled in here and I just didn't make it. Look how close I am. But such is life when you're trying to run the battery down to zero to do charge recordings. And I had to use my Lightning, which I had there also. My friend Pete was following me that night in case I had a problem like this when I run the car down. My Lightning has Pro Power on board. I was able to charge up the Optiq so I could get to the charger. But it ran out at 2% state of charge. And now everything that happened at the end of this range test is starting to make sense. I said that when I had about 4% state of charge, the vehicle wouldn't maintain 70 miles an hour. And that's because I wasn't at 4% state of charge. The vehicle thought it was, but I was probably at around 2% state of charge right there, because I noticed that at 2% it ran out. So we had 2% less than what I thought we had. Okay, and how does that affect the kilowatt hours that was used in each quarter of the range test? Well, when the vehicles are new, sometimes the BMS system hasn't calibrated the state of charge correctly. You need to do a few charging cycles, and then the car kind of figures everything out and gets it correct. This was a brand new Optiq. I was the first person to get it on loan. It only had like 200 miles when I got it, so it was only charged once, maybe not even charged at all, maybe just charged at the factory and that was it. So the first time I drove it, I literally took it on the range test the day after I got it. The vehicle had only been charged maybe once at the factory and once by me. The state of charge calibration was off. So when the car was slowing down and I thought I was at around 4 or 5% state of charge, again, I didn't know because it doesn't display on the screen. I was really at about 2% state of charge. So that makes a big difference when you're getting down to the very final miles. It was at 2 or 3%, somewhere in there, but very low. I thought I had much higher percent state of charge because that's what it was displaying. So that affects the quarterly kilowatt hour draws also. You notice the first 3 quarters I used like 23 kilowatt hour, then at the end I only had 20. Well, that's because the state of charge was inaccurate as I was going down, and I was getting more, a bigger percentage of the battery. And then later on, I really didn't have 25% of the battery for that last 25% of the range test. I probably only had like 22% of the battery or something like that. So, and I don't drive it out till the battery's completely dead and stops. So, you know, that kind of makes sense now as to why the final quarter of the range test, I didn't go as far and I didn't have as much energy to use. I also mentioned that the end of the range test, I probably had a couple more kilowatt hours in the tank. I probably didn't. I probably had maybe 1 at the most, because if you noticed when I finished up, I used a little bit more than 90 kilowatt hours. When I did my Equinox range test, I finished up with almost the exact amount of kilowatt hour used. So I pretty much drained this battery. I think it was only at most 1 kilowatt hour left in there. And that's what the Optiq has, you know, between 90 and 91 kilowatt hour at the most, not the 92 or so that I was speculating when I kept seeing us get 23, 23, 23. I think you're right around 90 kilowatt hour. And, you know, it's disappointing it only went 250 miles. My Equinox range test did much better, but that was a front-wheel drive Equinox, and the weather was much nicer, it was much warmer. So it was great conditions to do a range test. And as you could see there, I ended up with 303 miles, 3.4 miles per kilowatt hour. But that again was a front-wheel drive version. I had an all-wheel drive Optiq. I had bigger wheels, wider tires, and it was much colder out, which led to me getting 50 miles less than I did with my Equinox in that range test. I'm hoping to do a range test of an all-wheel drive Equinox at some point soon, but I haven't been able to secure one. All right, well, that's pretty much all we have here today for our 70 mile an hour Optiq range test, 250 miles-ish. Take into consideration the weather conditions. I think I would have gone a little bit farther if it was 20 or 30 degrees warmer, maybe if I didn't have the 21-inch tire and wheel package. If it was the 21-inch tires, you could probably expect to go somewhere around 270, 275 miles in an Optiq in perfect conditions, cruising along the highway, set at 70 miles an hour. That would be my guess. All right, well, that's all we have here today. Listen, if this is your first time here at State of Charge, please hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you don't miss any upcoming electric vehicle news and reviews. And as always, thanks for watching.